Okay, in this part we're just going to finish this piece up. Just going to start by just adjusting this circle a little bit. And just poly push in as usual. I'm just going to make some adjustments. So I just want to get rid of this loop for the time being. Makes it a little easier to make the adjustments. Again, just taking it down to its simplest form, and then we can adjust the shape and then add them in later. So basically the shape's a bit too flat at the moment, we just need to add in the angle to kind of match the reference. Just remember we're adjusting the depth here, so just using the x-axis rather than putting it down, because we've got that already matched up in the side viewport. Because this one's a little out of scale. Just adding a bit more curve to the shape. So just checking the ref there, see there's a bit of a crease that comes down following this edge. So I'll just use a cut tool and cut that in. realise I'm aligned this edge to the wrong edge. I actually have it right the first time. So I'll bring this back to where it's supposed to be. Again, not worrying massively about topology at the moment, we're just cutting the edge where we want it. And we'll just start fixing up all these edges. And again, we basically have a crease that fades back into the surface, so we'll just do 3 edge loops and just cancel it at the end. Just remember I've got to bring this edge out a little bit to create the crease. So now edge loops somewhat in place, and we'll just cut in these edge loops. And just remove the middle edge. And just remember to continue that loop around. Just gonna push these up and back and down again just to make sure they're flat with the surfaces. So we're looking a little bit wobbly at the moment. We'll just keep on trucking with the polys cutting in, and we'll just eventually get there and smooth it all out. This be a little bit of a crease here, so we're just going to try and push these edges a bit closer together and try and get that in to match the reference. Just pushing those down a bit to match reference again. So the crease is supposed to be like equidistant from the outer edge. Just making sure you weld them up because the cut tool is a bit annoying sometimes. And just doing a bit more poly pushing, trying to smooth everything out. So we're just going to move on to the whole detail here. And start by extruding it in. We'll just scale that a little bit, and that allows us to select the edges, and then we can start adjusting the shape. was always gonna make some loops around the creases. I figured it'd be easier to do it a slightly different way, so I'll just bring all these edges into the middle and go from there. Yeah, and to create the creases, we'll just do the 3 edges and then cancel it out at the end. Just adding in the extra loops here just to quad everything up. So we'll just do the same again on this top crease. Just make sure the section's flat. And we're just cutting our edge loops again. Need to straighten this up a little bit, it was a little bit curved. That side's pretty much done. We just gotta clean up this side. Just use the ring spinner there just to select all the edges we want. Just convert to vertice and scale them in a bit. And we can just drag them in to make this part thinner than the other part, just to match the reference. Move all this out a little bit. The shape wasn't looking quite right because basically we haven't got our edge loop in here, so we're just mashing a few edges and get the loop in. There's quite a hard crease on this edge, so make sure the edge loops are in place. Just remember it's a little quicker doing the moving edges instead of doing the verts separately. It's looking a little closer to our reference. This edge is a little bit wobbly, so we're just going to straighten it out a bit. It's the importance of kind of zooming out and checking your model over, just watching how the light reflects. You can always see all the errors in the mesh. So just going to fix up this little pincher. So just make sure these are all flat. So now we'll just focus on this side now that the hole's pretty much sorted. This is the right side of the piece near enough done. And then we'll just concentrate on the left side, get all the details cut in. So in preparation for the hole cutting, we're just going to make sure there's an edge going through the middle of it, and that we've got polys on the left and right side. So just make there's a row of polys in the middle as well, just so the two holes aren't connected in the middle, which will usually create a star, which will cause pinching. So just use a spline again as usual. And just cut around with the snap tool again. So we're just adding our outer edge loop there. Just give it a little bit of a chamfer there, and then just scale it back. Add in the edge loops. A little bit of a crease on the bottom edge, so just going to try and drag this down just to not make it a bigger influence like it is at the moment. Just doing that little edge removal there just to make sure the edge was flat. Obviously cut down on the pinching. Just get all these edges connected. Just trying a little topology idea to see if we can cancel it in the middle. I think it causes a bit of an error. So let's see how it goes. So it does did create a bit of a pinch or lump in the mesh. So we're just going to just extend the loops and just continue it on. Just trying to cut it down really, because basically there's a load of topology there. It's not basically not doing anything. So it basically just causes more problems. So basically just got to try and even it out, and try and smooth it out as best we can. What you can do if you want to smooth stuff out, occasionally if you just select the vertices you want to move, and then go into the paint deformation under relax. In certain circumstances, it can smooth things out and even the topology out without you having to do it manually. So it is a useful little tool. It doesn't work all the time. Just trying to smooth out all the little errors. It's usually best not to do what I'm doing here, and cloning the hole. I was being a bit lazy just instead of cutting in a new one. If you're doing flat surface stuff, then it's fine, because obviously the surfaces will be exactly the same. But on a curved surface like this, they're usually always different. So it's just best to do them all separately. So just going to do a little inset here just so I can bridge all the edges. Not looking too bad, so we just need to clean up this section in the middle a bit. Try and find a place for all these edges to go. You can see this is a little bit messy. It's basically using lots of long, thin rectangles, which usually always cause problems. So that's why it's quite important to always keep quite even quads. not particularly much to say in these kind of parts. This is endless poly pushing just to clean everything up, really. Kind of a byproduct of doing sub-D stuff. This is always cutting into edges will create problems, so there's quite a bit of poly pushing around just to smooth everything out. Just going to try the relax again, see if that sorts out any of the problems. Smooth the area we're actually relaxing quite well. It's just that it's left a few other little problems on the parts that we didn't relax, so to try a different approach. Just going to try and manually pull them out with the local coordinate system. If your z-axis on the vertices isn't pointing outwards like it should be, you'll basically just have to reset the x-form of the piece. So it's essentially working with the normals. So we're just trying to add in a few more edges just so we don't have so many long thin triangles. Just try and make the quads a bit nicer. Just using the little chamfer trick we did earlier a few times. And just making sure you weld up when you're done. So as we added in a few more edges, we just got to adjust this circle again. Gonna try a complete destruction approach. Just basically get rid of everything and then just try and add in the edges. Basically trying to keep it flat so it won't cause any problems, but I don't think it quite works either. Basically these kind of situations, just basically try every kind of method you know of flattening things out and just see which one works. It's looking a little bit smoother at the moment, so just cut this edge back in and go from there. Yeah, and just trying to even out the topology. More fun time polyvision. Going to try another little method here again, just to try and smooth things out. Basically try and make it smooth with the topology we got here, and then we can just cut in the other few edges, so it saves trying to edit them all at once. So we can just adjust a few edges here and then do some minor adjustments once we cut in the final edges. Basically just trying to give it a very slight curve, which usually gets rid of any errors. It's looking a bit better already. So we'll start adding in the other edges. We'll try and add in that very slight curve again. It's looking a bit better than what we had before. So it's looking a lot smoother than what we had. So we'll leave that for the time being, and we'll just connect up these top edges. Details of the piece is near enough sorted. So it's like going to phase usually called your finishing or the polishing of the piece. Basically just getting in the thickness and just like wrapping up the piece to make it look like an actual solid object instead of just being a plane, as it were. We'll just start with a shell with a few segments, and we'll just take it back down and go from there. Just going to add an edit poly on top for the time being, so if we do mess it up we can go back. And basically just want to select this whole entire border edge. And then we just add a little chamfer just to match the reference. So once we've got something we're happy with, we're just going to go around and fix up the open edges the chamfer's created. Basically, we don't really need this back panel, so we're just going to try and find a part we can delete. So again, we just delete the edit poly, which brings us back to our original mesh, and then we can just by adding a few segments, we can just delete the ring around here, and that should segment off the back part as an element once we sort out these rings as well. We just need to do a final two on the little holes here. That should have separated the piece, the front from the back. Should be able to select the element on the back now. Yep. Then we can just delete that. And basically just leaves us with the front face with a bit of thickness. Can leave the back face if you want to, but it's kind of like a little waste of polys really. Just try and keep the poly count down where we can. So just select the border edge again, and just remember the number we did before, which was, for me, it was 0.3. And we'll just weld up all the open chamfers on the edges. And then we'll just start adding in all our edge loops for all our hard edges. And just try and keep the mesh somewhat even. Just remember this edge needs to be needs to be a rounded edge here. So we're going to leave that edge as a diagonal and then just continue the loops as usual. Edge is still a bit sharp, so there must be some duplicate vertices. So we're just going to make sure we weld everything up. After a while you kind of get used to what looks right and what doesn't look right, with how TurboSmooth works. So you can usually tell when there's something wrong going on. This edge was being a little bit segmented the way we had it, so we're just going to try and add in a few more edges and quad off this corner, and that should smooth it out a little bit instead of being so segmented after the TurboSmooth. But now we added more edges, we just need to manually curve it out a little bit. So it's looking a lot better. You can see with this slide it doesn't, essentially it would usually be quicker, but it doesn't always work that well. It basically works on a percentage between the distance between each edge. So if you've got some parts that are closer than the others, then it's not going to be the same all the way around, which is generally what you want from an edge loop. So half the time it's a bit better to slide it in yourself. Basically, if you use the edge selection, you can basically slide 2 edges at a time, 2 vertices at a time even. The piece is looking a bit more polished. I was checking why it wasn't lining up in the top viewport. It's basically because of the perspective distortion again, which things lower down the model are going to look thinner to the ones that are closer to the camera. It's lined up with the side and the bit of the front, so it will do. So we should just continue adding in all these loops. Remember to name your piece once you're done. I'm just going to do a few little adjustments again, just to finish the piece off. It's a little pinch thing here, basically we didn't weld these vertices up, or connect them even. So just connect those up. Remember, I don't particularly need these inner parts of the mesh, so I should get rid of those as well. Make sure you do a save on this part with the edit poly intact, and then because you don't need it afterwards, then just make a new save with it all collapsed. So just collapse the turbo smooth, make sure you reset the X form, and then just re-add this symmetry in turbo smooth. Wasn't entirely happy with the finished product of this piece, so I think we revisit it a little bit later in the DVD or the next DVD, and just polish it up a bit further. But for now it looks fine, and we'll just carry on with the bike.